Welcome to A State of Mind. This is Julian Royce. I'm recording this here in my office where I work as a therapist, meditation teacher, and facilitator, and I'm excited to bring you a new episode because I truly believe in the power of conversations to change lives. Please check out the show notes for each episode to learn more about the topics covered and our guests, and check out the affiliate links of all our sponsors. That is a wonderful way to support this podcast, as well as visiting our Patreon page to support the podcast directly. I want to share with you about kanna. Kanna is an amazing herb from South Africa. The scientific name is Salatium tortuosum, and it's been used for centuries to support mood, emotional openness, and connection. I've been working with a company called Ka and Pathogenics here in Boulder, and I have an affiliate link below so you can order it and support the podcast. And I just want to share a little bit more about it. There's been some amazing scientific studies showing that people taking kanna actually score higher in compassion and empathy and openness, and it's a mood uplifter. It helps you feel better, almost like drinking a strong cup of dark chocolate cacao might be something similar, but it's different than that. It has its own unique feeling. One cautionary note is it's not recommended if you're taking SSRIs or other drugs that act on your serotogenic system, and you should talk to your healthcare provider. So this isn't healthcare advice or medical advice, but kanna is legal and it is powerful and potent, and it can be a helpful ally in your path. So if you're interested in exploring it more, check out the link below, and I look forward to seeing you there. Another way you can support this podcast and improve your overall health and wellness is through Shilajit. Shilajit is a traditional mineral-rich resin. It's been used for thousands of years in the Himalayas, and it's really incredible. I have access to really high-quality Shilajit that's been tested and made sure that it doesn't have any harmful additives, nothing like that. It's from the Ural Mountains of Russia, and you can message me at the link below in the podcast show notes if you're interested. And I'll just share a little bit about Shilajit. It's actually formed from ancient plant matter that's been compressed over centuries. It's very high in fulvic acid and trace minerals. It helps support mitochondrial function, energy production, and nutrient absorption. And a lot of people today are using it for vitality, endurance, cognitive clarity, overall resilience. It can taste a little gnarly, but I like to drink it in the morning with warm water, which is a traditional way to take it. And if you haven't tried it out, try it out. It's definitely been a game changer for me, and I think it's a great way to start off your day. Another way you can support this podcast as well as your health and wellness is to check out the blue light blocking glasses from EMR Tech. There's an affiliate link below in the show notes, and they're making really high quality glasses that I think are also pretty fashionable. There's different glasses for during the day, for during the sunset, or for during the evening. And I think this is a simple thing that we could all start doing more that can really improve your health. It'll improve your sleep at night if you wear them during the day and at night. There's research showing that blue light suppresses melatonin. It disrupts our circadian rhythm, negatively impacting our sleep quality, our recovery, and our nervous system regulation. And so as more and more of us are spending more time on screens, having things like good blue light blocking glasses that you actually like to wear, I think can be really helpful. So check it out below. Let me know if you have any questions. I want to share today a little bit about trauma, about why someone might come to therapy, and about what a path of growth and transformation can look like, and the roles that something like psychedelic medicine could play, and the roles of meditation in this process. So a lot of people reach out to me because they have the sense that they have trauma and they want to heal from that. And trauma has been defined in different ways, but one way to understand it is, a classic definition could be something like trauma was an experience in the past in which you felt or were overwhelmed, in which you weren't able to process or make sense of at that time. And it's been stuck or stored in your nervous system as a kind of energy. It's connected with the memory. There's emotions there that weren't felt at the time. And it's there under the surface. And trauma will compound over time. It's important to normalize it and humanize it. We all experience, all humans experience trauma as we go through life. There's difficult things that happen. And it's not uncommon for someone to experience something traumatic and feel fine and carry on with their life. And then something else happens that's traumatic and they feel fine and they carry on with their life. And then something that could even seem like a small thing happens, and it's the proverbial hair breaking the camel's back. where all of a sudden they're having full-blown PTSD symptoms. They're in fight or flight, they're having trouble sleeping, maybe they're having flashbacks. And so what has happened in that case is the trauma has been there under the surface, building up in the nervous system, kind of compounding until eventually something happens that kind of cracks the dam. And that's often the point in which people will reach out for therapy. So trauma occurs when an experience overwhelms our capacity to process, feel, and integrate it at that time. And I think it's important to, normalize it. Life is traumatic. And so trauma is a spectrum, and it's something that we all experience. And the good news here is trauma, it could become PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It could also become post-traumatic growth, meaning that we learn, we grow, we transform, we deepen as a human through these difficulties. And the modern world, has a lot of challenges, and therapy and coaching have an important role to play. So from my point of view, therapy is something that ideally could benefit everyone. We don't need it all the time, but there's no shame in it. There's nothing wrong with you about it. And if you invest in yourself in this way, if you learn tools to work with your body, with your nervous system, if you learn how to expand your capacity to be with what is, to feel what you're feeling, to recognize it, all these skills will help you in your life. So, sometimes I work with younger people, with teenagers or young adults. I think that's wonderful because you're really making an investment in yourself that could serve you well for the rest of your life. So trauma doesn't only happen from a catastrophic event. For example, a car crash could be a traumatic event, of course, or getting robbed could be a traumatic event, or sexual assault would be often a traumatic event. And I say often because, one of the interesting things about trauma is the exact same thing could happen to two different people, and they could respond in two very different ways. For one person, it could become a traumatic experience that they need help healing from. And for another person, they might have the tools and the resources, or just be in a place where it doesn't actually affect them that much. Or it could be the case, like I just spoke to, where it actually does affect them on a more subconscious or unconscious level, and only later in life do they realize that there's trauma stuck there that needs to be healed. But trauma doesn't just happen from catastrophic events. It could happen from experiences of being neglected, of being emotionally invalidated, of not being seen or witnessed, especially over longer periods of time. And of course, it can happen from chronic stress, low-grade, low-level stress. Perhaps you learned from your family growing up, or you learned as a way to get through high school and college and your job to kind of constantly be in this state of chronic stress and running off of adrenaline. And over time, that is going to develop into more and more trauma and trauma responses. It could come from a lack of attunement and care from your caregivers. It can happen from the environment that you're in. If you're growing up in an environment which, either growing up in an environment or spending a significant period of time in an environment that's not safe, not emotionally safe, not physically safe. Someone could be in a war zone, for example, and never directly experience violence, but they're living under the constant threat of it and constantly hearing about it. That can certainly develop PTSD. Or you could grow up in a situation where, for example, you're being bullied at school or just seeing other people being bullied. That's happening day after day, year after year. That can lead to trauma. So some signs of having trauma or being in a kind of trauma response is one of them is hypervigilance, which is where you're constantly scanning for danger. Or to say it another way, there's a part of your brain or a part of your mind that's constantly looking out for danger. And again, it can be happening kind of subconsciously. Another response could be increased sense of anxiety, or this kind of background anxiety that's constantly there in the background. It could look like emotional numbing, feeling a sense of numbness or not being able to feel anything at all. And in a more extreme form, that can be a kind of disassociation, checking out, not really being present to your life. It could show up as having issues with impulse control and just being kind of impulsive. And it could also show up as trying to be too controlling and rigid, needing to control things, needing to have this kind of rigidity. You can kind of feel it. It could also show up as people pleasing, which is sometimes called the fawn response. So a lot of times when we talk about traumatic nervous system response, we know about fight, flight, and freeze. And a fourth response is called fawning, which is a kind of people pleasing, where by making yourself more and more agreeable, trying to please other people, go along with what they want, it's a way to create safety or try to be safe for yourself, but it can be a trauma response. It could also look like attempts at perfectionism, which is connected with control. And it can also look like an inability to rest, disrupted sleep, or just never fully, deeply resting. These are all intelligent survival adaptations that, if they become chronic or happening often, can severely disrupt your quality of life and cause a lot of issues and cause all kinds of long-term health problems. So good trauma therapy will help with this. On the nervous system level, trauma is dysregulating the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that is scanning for threats, connected with that hypervigilance. It can dysregulate the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain connected with memory and memory integration and consolidation. And, part of healing trauma will be you don't lose the memories, but you're able to understand them in a new way and tell the story in a new way that's more empowering and less disempowering. Trauma can dysregulate the prefrontal cortex and just our autonomic nervous system in general. So one of the understandings of what trauma is, in the psychological sense, is the body is continuing to react as if that danger is still happening, even when the event is over. And the more deeply we understand this, the more deeply we understand the wounds and the negative impacts of things. Someone being violently robbed on the street one night, it would be, in some ways that would be great if it could be a one-time thing that just affected you and you were able to process it a few days. And if you're able to see a therapist and get help, you can process it and it won't have a bunch of leftover effects. But for many people who go through a difficult experience like that, it does lead to chronic long-term effects. So part of other ways that could show up, intrusive thoughts, avoidance of people, places, situations, emotional dysregulation, shame, numbness, hyperarousal, difficulties in relationship, because often this is connected with attachment wounds and shows up in our relationship in different ways. For example, if someone had a traumatic experience with a bully, and there's that stuck energy in their system and it hasn't really been healed or dealt with or processed, in a fight with their partner, they could all of a sudden in that moment see their partner as like that bully and lash out in a way that is way bigger than that situation actually called for, just to share with you an example there. But another way to look at this is post-traumatic growth. Can we shift the script here, and can we frame things as a process of learning and of growth? And there's this beautiful quote by Leonard Cohen that says, what is the quote? There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And this idea that the things that have happened that are difficult, that are painful, they can be things that we learn from, that we grow from, that can help us to help other people or help us to make different decisions. If we really engage and heal, things that were traumatic can become catalysts for growth and for transformation. And in many contemplative traditions, suffering, it's not about romanticizing it or, trying to say it's some great thing, but understanding that it can become part of a path of awakening and of real transformation. And, in the Buddhist tradition, we don't want to reject our experience. We want to engage with it, have a relationship with it, and not reject our emotions, but understand that they can hold wisdom. So real transformation in this sense, it's not about becoming something else, but it's about loosening rigid patterns that prevent us from experiencing our fundamental wholeness. And I've come more and more to see that healing and awakening are not two separate paths, but that trauma healing can create our capacity for deeper awakening and expanding our compassion. And really our modern culture, I think, is producing more and more fragmented nervous systems. And we can learn from contemplative traditions, and we can see where it's meeting contemporary neuroscience to converge on how human beings can become more and more whole and less fragmented. And one of the things I've noticed in myself and in so many people in our modern culture is that we are under this pressure for more and more speed. And the world can seem more and more like this big competition, like a kind of zero-sum game. many of us who are motivated to personal growth and want to do the healing work, we can get into this kind of trap of always trying to optimize, always trying to prepare, always consuming, comparing, producing, and never arriving. And we're sending a message to ourselves that we always have to do more, that it's not enough, or that we're not enough, and that there's not enough time. And this can create this internal pressure in us that is actually can become trauma, and it can become a trauma response. And underneath that is some kind of belief that the world is not safe, that if I stop doing things all the time, something terrible will happen. And of course, it can also be that by staying so busy, you're avoiding the feelings that are there. You're avoiding grief, sadness, even anger. And so this cultural move to always be faster and always have the speed that we just keeps going more and more, and to kind of idolize people that seem to be doing so much. So many successful people actually have teams of people behind them, helping them do all these different things. There's a cost to that. And it's really important to slow down, to feel what's here to be felt, and to learn how to be grounded and regulated and have a sense of contentment. And that can really open the doorway to meditation, to a spiritual path, to connection with something bigger than ourselves. There's a psychological cost to constantly living inside an imagined future and doing that moment by moment all day long. And we need to balance that by slowing down and expanding our presence and our awareness here and now. And in the Buddhist tradition, this kind of speed is itself a form of suffering. And it can be a more subtle form. It can feel addicting at times. It can feel good when we're getting things done. But again, we're constantly living in an imagined future. And we can engage with our spirituality or meditation practice where it's not about escaping life or transcending, but it's about fully inhabiting our experience here and now and accessing this wisdom of equality, of equanimity. That this wisdom that, in some sense, what we're really looking for is right here, right now, all along. And we can tune into that, we can appreciate that, and we can still do things. So we can not be stuck in an extreme of, trying to meditate all the time, but not be in the extreme of constantly trying to do things all the time either. To be able to honor our natural rhythm, our natural pace. I think that's so important. So one thing you could do is take small moments many times. It's a beautiful meditation teaching. Small moments many times. Slow down, take a pause, check in, tune into your presence, feel your feet on the floor, or connect with your own awareness, or connect with your own heart, the heart of your awareness. And if there's a part of you that is afraid that if you stop doing things or stop moving so fast, you'll be left behind, to actually bring attention and love and care to that part. What does that mean? What is the fear there? Is this something you want to have running your life for the foreseeable future? Or would it be worth your time to slow down and develop a new relationship with this part of you that is running off this sense of urgency? In the world today, we have unprecedented convenience and we have unprecedented nervous system exhaustion. It's just exhausting. Just trying to keep up with all the TV shows or movies or social media reels that your friends put up, like that would be a full-time job in of itself, and it wouldn't be the best use of your time. So we just need to accept that there's just way more out there than we can take in, because the amount of information being created and consumed is actually going beyond our ability as human beings to do that. It's leading to nervous system exhaustion and overwhelm. And so one of the ways that psychedelic medicine and psychedelic therapy or ceremony can help is it is interrupting, this kind of default mode network. It's interrupting our habitual ways of being. It could help us to slow down. It could help us to notice what's actually happening on a deeper level. And an interesting place where meditation practice and contemplative practices and psychedelics meet is this disruption of the default mode network that modern neuroscience has really identified and been able to some really amazing science, identifying that and understanding it. And I think it can be really transformative to just notice your own default mode network more, bring more awareness and presence there without trying to fix it or change it or making it something bad or wrong. Simply notice it and name it to yourself. Our default mode network is characterized by things like self-referential thinking. It's referencing ourself. It's thoughts connected with ourself, how we're doing, who we are, how we're showing up, with regret, with what we should be doing, has this quality of rumination, constantly thinking, often negative, repetitive thoughts, again, connected with our autobiographical identity and the sense of an inner narrative. And, part of how psychedelics are helping people heal and transform is it's interrupting this. It's helping crack open this rigid default mode network. And meditation can do the same thing. One way we could look at this is that a good psychedelic experience in the right set and setting can help us have a peak experience. It can help us experience an incredible level of presence or insight. And then a consistent meditation practice can help stabilize those insights. It can help stabilize that sense of connection with our true self, with the heart of our awareness, however you conceive that. And so part of what we're understanding more and more clearly is the difference between peak states, which, it could be the mountaintop moment. You climbed a mountain, you get the view, your breath is taken away, and your mind is open, spacious, and clear, and you feel connected with everything. That's beautiful. And then we all know that doesn't last. And so we could call these moments of flow, of great presence, whether they happen through medicine or through contemplative practice or just through being outside and overwhelmed by nature or through your sexuality. There's many ways in which we can have peak experiences, and they're good to have and they're good to honor, and then they're good to not try to hold on to because they don't last. And there's a difference between peak experiences, which is a kind of altered state experience, and traits. And traits are long-lasting qualities that we develop in ourselves. And so you could have a peak experience, of that kind of spacious awareness or openness or seeing beyond the veil of your normal thinking. And then you could have a consistent meditation practice where it's not going to be, it's probably not going to be that peak state every time, but you're honoring the truth of that and you're cultivating it. And then those qualities can start to permeate your being and your daily life more and more. And I want to share just briefly this teaching from the Buddhist tradition about the 5 Buddha families, because I think it's a beautiful and simple map that can help us understand our experience, and it helps point us the way to transformation and a sense of awakening within our own lived experience, similar to internal family systems where we are getting to know the different parts of ourselves. We are actually not trying to bypass or get over or get rid of our thoughts or emotions, but we're seeking to bring more understanding to them and develop a relationship with them so that they are no longer seen as problems or as obstacles, but as parts of our own living life force and essence. And so the 5 Buddha families have this kind of understanding that within every disturbing thought or emotion is at its core wisdom. And so we don't need to get rid of them, but we need to awaken them from within themselves. And the 5 Buddha families, we have in the middle, the Buddha family, and its diluted form is ignorance. And that could look like a sense of cloudiness, a sense of tiredness, not seeing clearly. It's kind of like classic delusion, ignorance, fogginess, It could also be disassociation, just kind of spaced out or checking out or kind of blank dullness. All those kinds of qualities are in that Buddha family. And in its wisdom form or awakened form, it's spacious awareness. It's this kind of infinite, clear seeing awareness. And if you want to imagine this, and visually, that could be in the center. And then the other 4 Buddha families will be around it, like the 4 points of the compass. And so another Buddha family is the Vajra family. And that's connected with anger. So its diluted expression is one of anger. And its wisdom is mirror-like clarity. It's seeing things clearly. And if we pay attention to our experience, anger carries with it this kind of sharp clarity. It could be very sharp. It could be very cutting. It can act out destructively when it's coming from an ignorant place. But when it's coming from wisdom, it is seeing clearly and it's knowing what action to take. And, anger is connected with boundaries. We often feel angry when a boundary is violated. And it's good. It's good that we feel that. And if we can see it clearly in the moment, we can speak to the boundary violation rather than attacking the person or thing that caused it. There's an interesting, it's so profound, like teaching in Buddhism that to not take things personally. And modern neuroscience, modern psychology has the exact same insight. our minds have this tendency to reify things and give them an identity. And then if someone violated a boundary or insulted us or, did something wrong, we have this kind of natural conditioned impulse to say, oh, that's a bad person. Instead of looking at the words and actions and where they came from and saying that action was wrong, doesn't mean that they're a wrong person. And if we can get that difference, it's the difference between creating more war and conflict in the world and the difference between creating more peace and understanding and having healthy boundaries. So then another Buddha family is connected with desire, with passion. And its ignorant manifestation is grasping, addiction. It's connected with sexuality in the Buddhist tradition. And its wisdom aspect is discriminating awareness wisdom, the ability to see clearly what to say yes to, what to say no to. And then another Buddha family is connected with pride. It's and all these have different colors, which I could share too, but the wisdom aspect of pride is the wisdom of equanimity, seeing the equalness of everything as part of it. And then you can appreciate it, and you could have a big feast. You could have a beautiful dinner party, for example, and be very generous. So part of that wisdom quality is generosity. And then another Buddha family is, the last one is jealousy. And that's connected with the color green, in this tradition. And the wisdom aspect is enlightened action. And it's connected with the element of wind, so it has this elements of, has this quality of like speed, being able to move quickly and get things done, but it's coming from wisdom and knowing what to do and then being able to rest back into your true nature, rather than its ignorant aspect as a kind of jealousy, a constant comparing yourself to others, never feeling good enough, never feeling complete. Some of those things we were talking to earlier, it's connected with speed and this wind element. And, that's a big thing in our culture now that is really being used to manipulate people and just reduces the quality of our life. It's like it's the rat race kind of mentality. So those are the 5 Buddha families. The Buddha family Buddha is called Vairochana in Sanskrit, and the Vajra family Buddha is called Akshobhya, and the Padma family, which is connected with passion and desire, is called Amitabha. It's a red Buddha, and it's connected with the element of fire. And then the pride one that we talked about is Ratnasambhava, is the name of the Buddha. It's the Ratna family, and it has the color yellow, and it's connected with the element of earth. And like I was saying, it could be generosity, it could be creating great abundance, but it can be coming from this kind of natural abundance, appreciating the abundance of the natural world, of all the food, of all the animals and plants, of how the sun and moon are here, how we have these big, beautiful oceans, really appreciating the earth element. And then the jealousy one is called the Karma Buddha family, and the Buddha is called Amoghasiddhi, and that's the green Buddha and connected with the wind element. And if we go back to the Vajra family connected with anger, the wisdom is the wisdom is mirror-like wisdom. That is connected with the color blue, and it's connected with the water element. And it's an interesting one. Anger, when water freezes, it becomes ice. And anger can have that quality of being like ice. Of course, it can also have the quality of being hot, so you have to take these things a little poetically. But and anger is connected with what's called the hell realm in Buddhism. So there's all these different connections with the 5 Buddha families. It's kind of a map or schema for understanding a lot of different things. But in our own experience, we can, you can notice your thoughts, your emotions, and you could notice the kind of energy behind them and connect them with the Buddha family and have that trust and understanding that there's wisdom at their core. And these kinds of teachings can help point the way to revealing that wisdom more. Which is going to be very different than trying to reject them or control them, very different than making yourself a bad person for having these emotions or thoughts or feelings. It can bring more understanding to them. When we're able to do that, all this energy is able to be liberated within us. We have access to more life energy and more expression, more fullness. We can feel life more fully. It doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily feel these things less. You're going to feel them more, and that's part of the tantric path, to feel your emotions more and more fully, more and more directly, and to be able to allow them to express with wisdom. And it is considered a dangerous path because, as you open up to these energies, as they become more powerful, as they become more conscious, there's an increase in the wisdom and the light and the goodness. And there's also potentially an increase in the shadow and the darkness. And it's because of that kind of danger that a lot of us kind of numb and turn away from them. Like, what would it be like to fully feel your anger and have it come out in a way that actually helps the situation rather than tearing someone down? It's worth trying, but it's also worth being humble about, so just wanted to offer this as a potential map. And I think it has beautiful connections and parallels with internal family systems. It's become so popular. It's like making a relationship with these different parts, bringing understanding to them, and allowing them to be integrated and recognizing they're all parts of you. It's all your mind, it's all your consciousness, it's all your energy. And for it to work together and show up in a more and more cohesive way that's more integrated, where we're experiencing more wholeness and less fragmentation, where we're experiencing more life energy and less tiredness or dullness or control. There's an interesting relationship between all of this and surrendering control, because we start to understand that our thinking conceptual mind is just a small piece of who we ultimately are. And that's, pointing towards this big mystery that we're all a part of. Something that's beyond what we can conceptually understand, but that we can feel into and that we can know through more intuitive awareness and less through conceptual understanding. So I just wanted to share with you all some thoughts about this and how these different pieces might fit together. And yeah, I think wherever you are, I think slowing down is something that will really help pretty much everyone, myself included, and taking time to get to know yourself, right? The examined life is worth living, as Socrates said. It's really true. It's not always going to feel good or easy, but especially in the long run, slowing down, increasing your awareness, your presence, and your capacity to be with emotions, your capacity to feel, and your capacity to be with the unknown, which again is humbling, but it brings us more in alignment with what's true, and it opens up the door to greater and greater intimacy and connection with ourselves and with other people. So wherever you are in your journey, best of luck, and thank you so much for listening.